You're watching VinylicPumaGaming. For the most part, Borderlands 2 is about acquiring better weapons than you already have. Sometimes you can get so focused on acquiring better weapons that you occasionally forget to recognize how fun some of the guns you can acquire are, or even cool aspects of how some of these particular guns can work, provided that they're backed by or combined with a proper build and gear combination. Today, I'm going to be going over 10 of what I think are some of the most fun and coolest guns and weapons in Borderlands 2. Now, before we get into this video, it's important to mention that this will be more of an opinions-based video. After all, what's most fun or cool is ultimately based on subjective preferences as opposed to more objective-based analysis. So if you don't see a gun that you like on this list, it's because these are some of my favorite guns in Borderlands 2. That said, feel free to share what some of your favorite guns and weapons are in Borderlands 2 in the comments section. Because in retrospect, I think there are a few more weapons that I really like that could have been included, but I ultimately decided not to include. But without further ado, these will be the top 10 most fun and coolest guns and weapons to shoot in Borderlands 2, starting now. Number 10. The Jakobs Diab Sniper. So I think the Diab Sniper is probably one of my favorite sniper rifles in Borderlands 2. Unlike the majority of Jakobs unique snipers, which are bolt actions, the purple, gemstone, and even green rarity Jakobs Diab snipers are both not bolt action snipers, and they've also got pretty good fire rates as well. Now, compared to the other non-unique Jakobs snipers, the Diab actually lacks a lot of the significant base damage that you'll see on other sniper rifles like the Muckamuck or even the Calipine. However, the major advantage that the Diab Sniper has is high fire rate, which can actually really boost DPS. You'll find that on lower difficulties, the high critical bonus that's inherent to Jakobs Sniper rifles should wipe out most generic enemies. However, on higher difficulties, the high fire rate of the Diab is useful for getting a lot of shots off in quick succession. As far as characters are concerned, I really like to use the Diab along with any other Vladov-barreled sniper rifle on Maya. You'll find that phase lock makes lining up several sniper shots in a row really easy. And this could be extremely deadly on normal and true Vault Hunter mode, and you should be able to take out most generic mob enemies in about 2 or 3 shots on ultimate Vault Hunter mode, especially if you've spec'd Maya for Ruin. In general, though, I would say all of the Vladov-barreled sniper rifles are really good, as well as some of the unique and legendary weapons like the Lyuda. So guns like the Dahl Scout, the Hyperion Competition, Vladov Drug, and others are excellent for most characters. But out of all of them, I think the Jakobs Diab is definitely one of my favorites. Number 9. The Kitten Assault Rifle. Now, picking just one assault rifle was a pretty difficult thing to do because I like a fairly wide variety of assault rifles in Borderlands 2. Guns like the Gatling Gun, Becca, and even some of the lesser unique assault rifles like the Varuk and the Kerblaster are pretty fun to use. There's also the Hail Assault Rifle, which is pretty similar to the Kitten, except it deals splash damage and fires projectiles in an arc. However, what I really like about the Kitten is that it's a really fun spray and pray type weapon. It's a good weapon to just tank with on certain characters like Salvador and Krieg, especially up against enemies that have minimal armor or low physical shielding. And when combined with Krieg's Hellborn and Bloodlust trees, the Kitten can get massive boosts to both fire rate and magazine size. And when you start combining this with like his other fire-based skills and items like the Flame of the Firehawk, Krieg becomes a walking firestorm of death and destruction. It's pretty great. The only issue I have with the Kitten is that it doesn't deal any splash damage, and this makes it really difficult to deal with certain types of enemies like shielded nomads or the warrior savages that you can encounter from the big Game Hunt DLC. And you'll also find that this gun isn't particularly good for long range either. At the end of the day though, the Kitten is a really nice gun, and it's a quest reward, so it's pretty easy to get. Just make sure you have the Torg DLC. Number 8. The Butcher Shotgun. I've always really liked the Butcher. While it's not the most powerful Hyperion shotgun in Borderlands 2, it's definitely in third place behind both the Conference Call and the Interfacer. While those two shotguns have massive critical hit bonus, the Butcher has a more interesting special effect. because as you shoot the Butcher, the weapon will randomly refill a portion of your magazine. So this means that one time you could unload a clip and shoot 14 bullets, while the next time it could end up being 21 bullets. Keep in mind too that the Butcher has a low projectile count, but it also has a very high fire rate when compared to most other shotguns in this game. And because it's a Hyperion shotgun, your shots become more accurate the longer you keep firing. So ultimately, I would say that the special effect on the Butcher goes really well with the inherent nature of Hyperion weapons in general. Now, really the only problem I can think of that the Butcher has is that it was inspired by the very first boss in Diablo 1 known as the Butcher. And he kind of sucks the very first time you fight him. But that isn't even related to Borderlands 2. Out of all of the characters, I think that the Butcher is probably best on Salvador, mostly because Salvador can just regenerate ammo from both his skills and his gunzerking ability, and as well as his class mods, like the Hoarder class mod. There's also Inconceivable, which sort of stacks with the ability that the Butcher has to basically re-add ammo to your magazine. And things can get pretty ridiculous, and you could feasibly use this gun to regenerate your shotgun ammo, provided that you're running low. Overall though, I think the Butcher is a pretty fun gun to use. Number 7, the Maker SMG. There's nothing more satisfying than throwing a TDR gun at a random mob or mini-boss enemy and simply watching it die. Now, there are a lot of great TDR weapons that do a crap ton of reload damage. However, I think my favorite TDR gun has got to be the Maker. Both because it's an SMG and its reload is a little easier to control than either launchers, shotguns, or pistols, but also because it's capable of dealing insane amounts of damage to enemies with the proper build. There's also the fact that the Maker is capable of deploying 2 child grenades as opposed to just one, and if this happens, the parent and both child grenades can explode on the target, dealing 3 times the reload damage of the initial parent grenade. This ability alone puts it ahead of E-Tech SMGs while also consuming significantly less ammo per reload. While I haven't tried this myself, you may find that an explosive version of the Maker works pretty well on Krieg. However, I've found that I tend to prefer to use the Maker on Axton, and this is because Axton has a lot of skills that boost grenade damage, and Axton, when combined with like a Grenadier or a Veteran class mod, and maybe like a Fire or the matching element of the Bone of the Ancients relic, the Maker's reloads get really powerful. The only real downside to the Maker is that it's not a really good conventional gun. So if you were to just like unload an entire clip into an enemy's face, you're going to find that there are better weapons out there for that purpose, namely like the Sandhawk or the Bitch SMGs. You may also find that the TDR Gunnerang and the TDR Avenger are capable of dealing more damage per reload. However, I think the Maker between the 3 is definitely the easiest and most fun to use. Number 6, the Infinity Pistol. Now, I know that the Infinity gets some hate from the more elite players within the community. On the one hand, I sort of see where they're coming from, since the reverence for the Infinity Pistol tends to trend towards being a little bit overrated, especially for players that use Zero and focus their builds around one shot, one kill, and a B shield. However, the Infinity Pistol, along with the Vladov Anarchist and Stinger, are really fun guns to fire rate cap on the console versions of Borderlands 2. Especially on 360 or PS3 or even the PC, provided that you've limited your frame rate to 30 FPS. You'll also find that the fire rate for the Infinity can get really high on the PC, PS4, and Xbox One, provided your frame rate is high enough. I've ultimately found that the best way to easily increase your fire rate cap for the Infinity is on Axton. As long as you have a blue Heavy Gunner class mod and a Sheriff's badge, you should be able to fire rate cap your Infinity or any other pistol with a fire rate of about 9.5 or higher fairly easily. Obviously, I prefer using the Infinity on Axton simply because Axton doesn't have the ammo regeneration or skills that allow him to not consume ammo like Salvador does. That said, you'll find that Salvador has both ammo regeneration And, of course, he has the inconceivable skill, which allow his shots to not consume ammo. And in that situation, I would actually recommend either the Stinger or the Anarchist pistols, because those just work better with money shot. Ultimately, the Infinity, along with other Vladoff-manufactured pistols with the Vladoff barrel, are awesome guns. Number 5. The Morningstar Sniper. Overall, I really like how the Morningstar Sniper both looks and performs as a conventional sniper rifle. It's also got a fairly powerful special effect that improves critical hit damage from time to time after the player reloads. And if you're a big fan of performing and or messing around with weapon glitches, the Morningstar is also capable of performing a glitch that's on par with the original Evil Smasher glitch. What you do is simply empty the entire clip of the Morningstar, and just as the reload animation starts, you quickly swap to another weapon that you have equipped. You'll know that things are working once you hear the Morningstar's voice start looping over itself. If you've done it all correctly, you should have massively increased critical hit damage for both the Morningstar as well as the weapon that you intended to infect. Just make sure that the weapon that you swap to is able to perform critical hits. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot else to say other than that the Morningstar is one of the easier weapons to reliably obtain on this list. You can't really beat a quest reward weapon, and I also don't think you can beat a quest that simply consists of killing 100 bandits. Even if you don't plan on glitching, I would say the Morningstar is definitely worth checking out, because while the Pimpernel and Lyuda are better guns, the Morningstar can certainly hold its own. Number 4. The Fastball Grenade. So as far as grenades go, the Fastball is by far my favorite. Sort of like the Baby Maker, nothing is more satisfying than chucking one of these at an enemy and watch them go down in one hit. While some badass enemies are a little more resistant or have more health, usually one or two more Fastballs will take them down. Now, originally, the Fastball was among one of the weakest legendary grenade mods in Borderlands 2, and this really didn't help it back in the day when Ultimate Vault Hunter mode was first released. It also had some issues with blast radius to where you could throw this thing and still miss, despite the fact that you were essentially on target. What made the Fastball awesome was the $100,000 loot hunt event that was used to promote Borderlands 2's Game of the Year edition. During this event, several different weapons got buffed, and the Fastball was one of the few weapons that received a very significant buff. In addition to massively increasing base damage, the Fastball also got improved blast radius, allowing the player a little bit more fudge room when throwing the grenades at enemies. So you don't have to be super precise anymore, and you deal way more damage when compared to other grenades. As far as characters go, both Krieg and Axton make good use of the Fastball. But what I will say about Axton, though, is that he can boost his overall grenade count through both skills, class mods that boost skills, and even relics. By doing this, you should easily be able to get a bunch of Fastball grenades for throwing at enemies. Really, the only weakness of this grenade is that most of the damage it deals is primarily splash damage. So this means you may not want to use this up against somebody like Saturn, who has very high splash resistance. Even still, the Fastball is amazing and is really fun to use. Number 3. The Flakker. The Flakker is a pretty awkward weapon at first, but once you realize that it's primarily best up against airborne enemies like surveyors or racks, and is also really good up against large enemies like Saturn or the Warrior, you may find that this is a gun that you're going to want to keep around. Now, the Flakker's projectile or firing pattern is extremely unique in the sense that it's designed to deal damage over a fairly wide area, where most other guns are designed to deal damage directly towards a very contained spot. The only other weapons that I can think of that are somewhat similar are guns like the Sawbar, which deals splash damage over a very contained space, and the Comfort Skull, which fires a lot of projectiles over a wide area. The Flakker is also capable of dealing ridiculous amounts of damage thanks to some of the passive weapon effect glitches that are inherent to both Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel. If the player shoots the Flakker and then quickly swaps to an equipped Torg rocket launcher, you can significantly boost the amount of damage that you can deal with the Flakker projectiles. Now, normally, the best rocket launcher to do this with would be the Ahab launcher from Borderlands 2. However, that requires DLC, so failing that, I would say that your best option would be the Nukem. Preferably either an Ahab or Nukem with the FWAPA prefix. With and without the passive weapon effects glitch, I think that you'll find that the Flakker is pretty useful and can be pretty fun to mess around with. Number 2, the Unkempt Harold. While it's utterly ridiculous, it's pretty fun to dual wield an Unkempt Harold along with a grog nozzle and literally obliterate almost anything in your path. I remember the first time I had a fully leveled up Salvador and managed to get my hands on a double penetrating Unkempt Harold and a grog nozzle. Since I mainly play Axton or other characters, it was amazing to see Salvador just tank and destroy really hard enemies like Saturn with an Unkempt Harold. As for the Unkempt Harold itself, it just fires a bunch of projectiles and deals splash damage, and it also has very high base damage for what it is. You should be able to effortlessly steamroll most enemies with this gun, where you couldn't do something like that with most of the other legendary pistols in the game. The only downside to the Unkempt Harold, though, is its ammo consumption, but I think you'll be dealing so much damage that you'll hardly even notice. Plus, there's a good chance that if you're playing Salvador, you don't even have to worry about ammo consumption because you'll just regenerate all of the ammo back. Overall, though, the Unkempt Harold is awesome, and it's really satisfying to use this gun to annihilate most enemies. Number 1, the Badaboom launcher. So the Badaboom launcher is a really great rocket launcher. In addition to having great damage and high projectile count, the Badaboom is also very ammo efficient. In fact, it's probably a little more practical to use the Badaboom than it is to use other launchers like the Nukem, Mongol, Bunny, Pyrophobia, and maybe even the Norfleet in most cases. However, the one thing that is really awesome about the Badaboom is its propulsion capabilities. While there are a few other weapons that their explosions can send your character flying up into the air, arguably the best weapon for doing this is the Badaboom. And if you can manage to get a low-level Badaboom on your character, you can use it along with your stock grenades to get to places that you might not have otherwise been able to get to. And if you have a sham shield, you can basically regenerate ammo at the same time that you're doing all of this. While all characters can make great use of the Badaboom, when it comes to rocket jumping, Salvador is definitely the best at it. This is mostly because he can dual Badabooms, and he can also throw 2 grenades at once, making really high jumps easier. Now, I'll go ahead and I'll admit here that I am not the best at rocket jumping on Salvador, but with some practice, you should be able to get into most out-of-bounds areas on maps. And one of my favorites to explore is at the Friendship Gulag, where it's possible to rocket jump out of the prison so you can check out a couple parts of the dust. Keep your eyes out for the Badaboom. It's not only a great rocket launcher, but it's also a really fun gun to use for rocket jumping. Alright guys, that's going to wrap up this particular video. If you like this video, please be sure to leave a like and let me know, what is your most fun, funnest, or coolest gun or weapon in Borderlands 2? Leave it in the comments, and as always, take care and I'll see y'all next time.